At 4:18 a.m. on August 3, 1943, Private First Class Roy Matsuda pressed himself into the hollow center of an abandoned rice threshing pile on Vella La Vella, his rifle barrel threading through gaps in rotted bamboo stalks. 72 yards downslope, 17 Japanese infantrymen were digging mortar pits along the exact route Charlie Company would march in 4 hours. His mission brief had been direct: mark positions, return before dawn, brief the S2. What he was about to do instead would kill 17 enemy soldiers, save 200 American lives, force the Pacific Command to completely rewrite sniper employment doctrine, and earn him a general court-martial that would destroy his career before it started. The rain hammered down like nails driven through canvas. Matsuda had occupied this position since 0140 hours, belly crawling 200 yards past Japanese listening posts to reach equipment farmers had left behind when the invasion came. The threshing pile stood 8 feet high, built from thousands of bamboo stalks lashed together and abandoned to rot. Months of tropical humidity had hollowed it from within while leaving the exterior intact. Perfect concealment if you were willing to share space with centipedes the size of your finger. Through his weaver scope, he watched Japanese engineers work with quiet efficiency. A lieutenant directing placement with a folded map. 3 mortar crews positioning Type 97 tubes at predetermined angles. Infantry establishing security in a disciplined perimeter. They'd done this 100 times. They were good at their jobs. In 3 hours and 42 minutes, they'd be in position to destroy Charlie Company before the Americans understood they were under fire. Matsuda knew the plan because he'd memorized it. Charlie Company advances at 0800 212 men, through the valley below this ridge to establish blocking positions against Japanese withdrawal routes. Standard doctrine. Textbook tactics. The kind of operation that worked perfectly until someone walked into a kill zone nobody knew existed. His orders couldn't have been clearer. Captain Hendricks had made them explicit during the 2,100 hours briefing the previous evening. Matsuda, you scout forward positions. You identify threats. You mark coordinates. You return. You do not engage. You are not an assault element. You are intelligence collection. Am I making myself understood? Yes, sir. Scout, mark, return. And Matsuda, if you get any ideas about playing hero, remember you're representing every Nisei soldier in this division. People are watching. People are waiting for one of you to screw up so they can say we made a mistake letting Japanese Americans carry weapons. Don't be that mistake. Yes, sir. Now Matsuda lay buried in rotting bamboo, watching 17 Japanese soldiers prepare to slaughter Charlie Company, calculating how long it would take him to crawl back to friendly lines, locate Captain Hendricks, brief the situation, coordinate artillery or an infantry assault, and execute before 0800 hours. 20 minutes to crawl out. 15 minutes to reach friendly positions. 10 minutes to find Hendricks. 20 minutes minimum to coordinate fire support. Total time, 65 minutes. Charlie Company stepped off in less than 4 hours. Plenty of time. Except artillery required visual confirmation of target coordinates. In this jungle with this weather, spotting rounds would take multiple corrections. Another 40 minutes. And Japanese listening posts would hear the first shells, warn the mortar crews, who'd displace before the fire mission achieved effect. Charlie Company would advance into an ambush from a different position nobody had spotted. Or he could shoot them now. All 17. Before they finished setting up. Before they could react. Before Charlie Company stepped off at 0800. His finger rested outside the trigger guard. The Springfield weighed 9 pounds 4 ounces. He'd carried it through Guadalcanal and New Georgia. 63 confirmed kills across 11 months of combat. He knew this weapon better than he knew his own hands. He also knew that engaging would violate direct orders, expose his position, initiate a firefight he couldn't win if things went wrong, and provide perfect ammunition for every officer who'd argued against allowing Nisei soldiers into combat roles. But Charlie Company would march into that kill zone at 0800 hours. And at 0803, the first mortar rounds would drop. And by 0815, 100 men would be dead or wounded because Matsuda had followed orders. Roy Matsuda grew up in Watsonville, California, fourth son of farmers who worked land they could never own because California law prohibited Japanese immigrants from property ownership. He learned to shoot hunting ground squirrels that destroyed irrigation ditches. His father gave him 3 cartridges per week. Missed 3 times and you got nothing until next Sunday. So he didn't miss. He learned patience working 10-hour days in strawberry fields where payment came by the flat, not the hour. Speed without precision meant damaged fruit, meant reduced payment, meant his family ate less that week. So he worked fast and careful, A combination that translated directly to marksmanship when he discovered that shooting was just another task requiring speed and precision applied simultaneously. December 7th changed everything. One day he was American. Next day he was enemy. Neighbors his family had known for 15 years stopped acknowledging them. Someone burned their equipment shed. FBI agents questioned his father about loyalty while implying that 40 years in America meant nothing because his eyes looked wrong. When the government announced formation of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, Matsuda enlisted despite his father's objections. His father called it betrayal, fighting for a nation that was preparing to imprison Japanese Americans behind barbed wire. Matsuda called it proof. Proof that loyalty wasn't about appearance. Proof that citizenship meant sacrifice. Proof that sometimes you demonstrate belonging by being willing to die for people who question whether you belong. Basic training at Shelby was education in American prejudice. White soldiers assumed incompetence. Officers expected failure. Ranges were segregated. Mess halls had separate seating. The only thing integrated was combat training because bullets don't discriminate even when people do. Matsuda shot expert on every qualification. Led his platoon in every tactical exercise. Graduated number 2 in his company. They made him a designated marksman anyway, not a squad leader, because command positions required trust the army couldn't extend to soldiers with Japanese faces. He'd proven himself in combat. Guadalcanal, 63 kills, 0 friendly fire incidents, multiple commendations from company commanders who needed his skills more than they needed their prejudices. But proving yourself to the men beside you didn't change what happened at staff meetings where officers who'd never seen him shoot decided Nisei soldiers required extra supervision. Now he was buried in a bamboo pile, watching Japanese soldiers who shared his ancestry prepare to kill Americans who shared his uniform. The irony was sharp enough to cut. At 0426 hours, a Japanese private walked directly toward the threshing pile. Matsuda's breathing stopped. The soldier was 19, maybe 20, carrying an entrenching tool, moving with the casual confidence of someone who owned this territory. He approached within 12 feet. Matsuda could see individual stitches on his uniform through the scope. The soldier stopped. Set down the entrenching tool. Unbuttoned his trousers. Urinated onto the ground 8 feet from where Matsuda lay motionless inside rotted bamboo. Matsuda watched through the scope, crosshairs steady on the soldier's chest, finger resting on the trigger guard. The soldier finished. Buttoned up. Retrieved his tool. Walked back to the mortar position without ever looking at the threshing pile. Just another piece of abandoned farm equipment. At 0503 hours, Matsuda heard American voices in the distance. Advanced scouts from Charlie Company, moving early, getting into position for the 0800 push. They were 2 miles out, but sound carried differently in jungle rain. The Japanese heard it too. The lieutenant issued quiet orders. Soldiers checked weapons. Mortar crews made final adjustments to elevation and deflection. They were ready. Charlie Company would arrive in less than 3 hours. 212 men walking into overlapping fields of fire from 3 Type 97 mortars with a combined rate of 45 rounds per minute. Matsuda did the math. First salvo at 0803. 30 seconds to correct fire. Sustained bombardment beginning 0804. By 0810, Charlie Company would suffer 80 to 90 casualties. The survivors would be pinned, unable to maneuver, perfect targets for follow-on attacks. Unless someone stopped the mortars before Charlie Company arrived. Matsuda's orders said scout and report. His training said follow the chain of command. His survival instinct said don't fight 17 enemy soldiers alone without support or extraction. Every rational calculation said withdrawing was correct. But Charlie Company was going to die if he followed orders. He thought about his father calling him traitor. About his brother in Manzanar writing letters saying Matsuda had betrayed his people by putting on American uniform. About Captain Hendricks saying don't be the mistake that proves we were wrong about Nisei soldiers. About Private Jimmy Kowalski from Chicago who'd shared his rations when Matsuda got malaria on Guadalcanal. About Corporal Marcus Washington who'd told white soldiers to shut their mouths when they made comments about Matsuda's eyes. About Sergeant Mike O'Brien who'd written in Matsuda's fitness report that he was the best shot in the battalion and recommended him for promotion that headquarters denied because they didn't promote Japanese Americans regardless of competence. About 63 names on his list. Soldiers he'd killed to protect Americans who looked at him and saw enemy faces. About 212 more names that would be added to someone else's list if he followed orders that prioritized regulations over lives. Sometimes the system kills the people it's supposed to protect. Sometimes you break the system to save them. He adjusted his position half an inch, settled the scope, controlled his breathing. At 0517 hours, Roy Matsuda made his choice. He squeezed the trigger. The Springfield cracked like lightning splitting bamboo. The sound trapped inside the threshing pile, amplified, deafening. Through the scope, he watched the nearest mortar gunner's head snap sideways. The soldier dropped across his weapon. Blood mist in the rain. Matsuda worked the bolt. Muscle memory from 10,000 repetitions. The spent casing ejected, bounced off bamboo stalks, disappeared into the rotted core of the pile. Fresh round chambered. He acquired the second mortar gunner, reaching for the weapon. Range unchanged. Wind negligible under triple canopy. Target centered. Fire. The second gunner fell. 2 bodies on 1 mortar. 3 seconds elapsed. The Japanese reacted like professionals. No panic. No confusion. The lieutenant was shouting bearings, directing return fire at probable sniper locations. Ridgeline positions. Tree platforms. The abandoned structures to the north. Every place a sniper should be. Nobody looked at the threshing pile. Farm equipment wasn't tactical terrain. Matsuda shifted aim. The radio operator grabbing his handset, trying to report contact. 74 yards. Moving target. Led slightly for lateral movement. Fire. The operator collapsed onto his equipment. The radio sparked and died beneath him. 3 kills. 8 seconds total. Now the Japanese understood they were fighting someone they couldn't locate. Return fire hammered the jungle. Rifle rounds snapped through vegetation, searching for targets that didn't exist. The lieutenant was directing fire systematically, working through probable positions, trying to suppress a sniper whose location remained unknown. Matsuda acquired a soldier firing from behind a fallen log. The position exposed the soldier's head and shoulders from Matsuda's angle. Adjust for slight elevation difference. Fire. 4 kills. 12 seconds. A Japanese sergeant began to understand. He turned slowly, scanning terrain most soldiers would ignore. His eyes tracked across the threshing pile. Stopped. Started to move on. Came back. The sergeant's eyes narrowed. His mouth opened to shout. Matsuda shot him through the throat. The sergeant went down, clutching his neck. The shout became a gurgle. Other soldiers saw where their sergeant had been looking when he died. Understanding spread like fire through the remaining Japanese infantry. Their fire shifted. Rounds began impacting the threshing pile. Bamboo stalks exploded. Splinters filled the air. The entire structure shook with impacts. A bullet passed 6 inches above Matsuda's head, so close he felt the pressure wave against his scalp. Matsuda pressed himself flat inside the hollow core. The bamboo pile was disintegrating around him. Another 30 seconds of concentrated fire would expose him completely. He'd be visible. He'd be dead. The Japanese fire slackened. Ammunition management. Heat buildup. The reality that sustained fire exhausts soldiers. In that pause, Matsuda rose back to firing position. Through gaps in shattered bamboo, he saw soldiers repositioning, trying to establish better angles on his location. He acquired a soldier running between positions. Moving fast. 78 yards. Led by 3 feet to account for speed and direction. Fire. The soldier tumbled. 6 kills. Another soldier attempting to flank right through dense vegetation. Good tactical movement. Would have succeeded against a conventional sniper. Matsuda tracked him through the scope. Waited for the soldier to clear an obstacle. Fire. 7 kills. The lieutenant understood he was losing. Matsuda saw it in his body language, the way he grabbed soldiers and physically directed them toward withdrawal routes. The lieutenant was trying to save what remained of his unit before this invisible enemy killed them all. Smart officer. Professional soldier. Fighting a situation that didn't match his training. 13 Japanese soldiers remained. The lieutenant ordered withdrawal by pairs. Bounding overwatch. Standard infantry tactics executed properly despite casualties. They were professionals who'd been fighting longer than Matsuda had been in uniform. Matsuda watched the first pair move. They were using terrain well, keeping obstacles between themselves and his probable position. Difficult targets. Low probability shots. He let them go. Focused on the covering element. 2 soldiers providing suppressive fire from static positions. They were exposed from his angle. Fire. 8 kills. Work the bolt. Fire. 9 kills. The withdrawal collapsed. The remaining soldiers broke and ran. No more tactical discipline. No more coordinated movement. Just survival instinct overriding training. They'd watched their unit destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't locate, couldn't kill. Their nerves shattered. Matsuda tracked the lieutenant. The officer was still moving tactically even in retreat. Combat crouch. Head rotating to maintain situational awareness. Range increasing. 86 yards. Multiple obstacles. The lieutenant would reach cover in 4 seconds. Matsuda led him by 4 feet. Accounted for vegetation. Accounted for movement. Fire. The lieutenant went down hard. Didn't move again. 10 kills. The remaining soldiers vanished into jungle. Matsuda tracked them through his scope, but they were using terrain properly now. Terror had made them careful. He could have fired additional rounds, but the angles were bad and the probability of hits was low. His grandfather had taught him that bad shots waste ammunition and reveal position without achieving effect. Every trigger press is a decision with consequences. He counted to 120. Listen. No movement in the mortar position. No sounds except rain and distant artillery and Charlie Company's advanced scouts getting closer. They were 90 minutes out now. Would arrive to find 17 dead Japanese soldiers and 3 destroyed mortars and no ambush. Matsuda saved his rifle and began extracting from the threshing pile. It was harder than entering. His legs had lost sensation from 4 hours of immobility. His back spasmed when he tried to move. The hollow cavity seemed to have compressed around him. Maybe the Japanese fire had collapsed portions of the structure. Maybe he'd swollen from insect bites and humidity. It took him 14 minutes to pull himself free. When he finally emerged into rain that felt like salvation, he couldn't stand. He sat against the threshing pile, working circulation back into his legs, and counted. 23 shots fired. 10 confirmed kills. 7 escaped. 3 Type 97 mortars destroyed. Radio operator dead, so no warning transmitted to other Japanese units. The ambush that would have devastated Charlie Company no longer existed. He'd violated direct orders. Captain Hendricks had been explicit. Scout and report. Do not engage. And Matsuda had just killed 10 Japanese soldiers while operating independently without authorization. Courts-martial had been convened for less. Soldiers had been shot for less. But Charlie Company would walk through that valley at 0800 hours and nothing would happen to them because of it. Charlie Company's lead scouts found him at 0647 hours. Corporal Davis led the element, carbine up, cautious. Davis stopped when he saw the bodies scattered across the mortar position. Looked at Matsuda sitting against the bamboo pile. Looked back at the bodies. His expression cycled through confusion and shock and something that might have been anger or respect. What happened here, Matsuda? They were setting up to hit your advance. I stopped them. How many? 17 total. 10 confirmed kills. 7 withdrew. Davis walked to the mortar position. Examined the Type 97s. Looked at their firing data, coordinates that matched exactly where Charlie Company would march. He stood there in the rain for a long moment. Then returned to Matsuda. You were supposed to scout and report. Yes. Not engage. Yes. Captain Hendricks is going to lose his mind. Probably. Davis keyed his radio. Charlie lead to Company 6. Contact at grid November 8. Multiple enemy Kia. Mortar positions destroyed. Request immediate command presence. The radio crackled. Captain Hendricks' voice came through tense. Charlie lead, identify who made contact. Davis looked at Matsuda for a long moment. Private Matsuda, sir. Silence on the radio. Long enough that Davis thought the transmission had failed. Then Hendricks' voice, carefully controlled. Secure the site. Send Matsuda to Company CP immediately. Nobody else approaches that position until I've seen it personally. Matsuda arrived at Company CP at 0734 hours. Hendricks was waiting outside the command tent with First Lieutenant Morrison, the company XO, and First Sergeant Cole. Hendricks' face was unreadable. Morrison looked worried. Cole's expression showed nothing, which in Matsuda's experience meant everything. Hendricks didn't wait for reports or explanations. You disobeyed direct orders. Yes, sir. I told you scout and report. Not engage. Yes, sir. You operated independently, without support, without authorization, without communication. You engaged superior enemy forces alone. Do you understand what you've done? Yes, sir. Hendricks pulled a map from his pocket. Unfolded it on a field table. Rain drummed against the canvas overhead. Lieutenant Morrison explained the situation. Morrison pointed to markings on the map. Sir, intelligence estimated Japanese forces were establishing observation posts in this sector. We expected listening positions, maybe light reconnaissance elements. Private Matsuda's scout mission was to identify their positions so we could plan Charlie Company's route accordingly. And what did he find? A fully established mortar position with 3 Type 97s, 17 infantry providing security, pre-sighted to bracket our exact route of advance. If they'd completed setup, casualties from the first salvo would have been catastrophic. Hendricks looked at Matsuda. You identified this threat. Yes, sir. And instead of reporting it through proper channels, you engaged. Yes, sir. Why? Matsuda chose his words carefully. Sir, time required to extract, report, coordinate fire support, and execute would have been insufficient. The mortar crews would have completed setup before we could neutralize them. Charlie Company would have advanced into effective fire. So you decided proper procedure would get soldiers killed? Yes, sir. And you decided independently that your assessment was more valid than the chain of command? No, sir. I decided independently that Charlie Company's survival was more important than my career. Hendricks stared at him. First Sergeant Cole cleared his throat. Sir, permission to speak. Go ahead. In 3 weeks, we've lost 94 men to Japanese ambushes. Matsuda eliminated 1 ambush position that would have killed or wounded 60 to 80 soldiers from Charlie Company. If we court-martial him for that, we're telling every soldier in this company that initiative gets you punished. Or, Hendricks said quietly, we're telling every soldier that orders exist for a reason. That individual action without coordination creates chaos. That we can't function as a military if soldiers decide which orders apply. Morrison spoke carefully. Sir, with respect, the tactical outcome was successful. 0 friendly casualties. 10 enemy Kia. 3 mortars destroyed. That's significant. The tactical outcome is irrelevant to the question of discipline. Is it, sir? Cole's voice carried an edge. Because from where I'm standing, discipline that gets soldiers killed isn't worth maintaining. The silence stretched. Rain hammered. Somewhere distant, artillery rumbled like gods arguing. Hendricks finally said, You're all dismissed except Matsuda. Morrison and Cole left. Matsuda remained at attention. Hendricks looked at him for a long time. Do you understand what you've put me in? Battalion wants to court-martial you. Says you're a dangerous example. Says letting Nisei soldiers make independent tactical decisions was a mistake from the start. They want to use you as proof that Japanese Americans can't be trusted with responsibility. Matsuda said nothing. Regiment disagrees. Says you saved Charlie Company and deserve commendation. But regiment doesn't want to explain to division how a private operating alone destroyed an enemy position that intelligence didn't even know existed. Makes everyone above company level look incompetent. Yes, sir. And then there's division. Division doesn't know what happened yet. But when they find out, they're going to ask questions. Questions about how a Nisei soldier was allowed to operate deep in enemy territory without direct supervision. Questions about whether your actions were tactical brilliance or potential collaboration with an enemy that shares your ethnicity. That one hit hard. Matsuda felt something cold settle in his stomach. Sir, I'm American. I know that. Morrison knows that. Cole knows that. Charlie Company knows that. But there are officers at division who see your face and see enemy. And they're going to use this as ammunition to argue that Japanese Americans shouldn't be in combat roles. Hendricks sat down on an ammunition crate. Looked exhausted. I can't protect you, Matsuda. I can write it up as proper reconnaissance action within mission parameters. But battalion won't accept that. They'll push for courts-martial. And if this goes to division, you're going to face officers who've been looking for an excuse to prove the 442nd was a mistake. I understand, sir. Do you? Because I don't think you understand what you've done. You've saved Charlie Company. You've also potentially ended integration of Japanese American soldiers in combat roles. Because if division decides to make an example of you, every Nisei soldier in this theater will be reassigned to labor battalions. That's the trade. Your tactical success for their futures. Matsuda had nothing to say to that. He'd been thinking about Charlie Company. About preventing an ambush. About saving American lives. He hadn't considered that success might be used as weapon against his own people. Get out of my sight, Private. Report back at 1800 hours. By then I'll know whether battalion is processing courts-martial paperwork or commendation recommendation. Either way, your war just changed. Word spread through the battalion by evening. Matsuda killed 10 Japanese soldiers from inside a bamboo pile. Saved Charlie Company from getting slaughtered. Violated direct orders to do it. Might get court-martialed. Might get a medal. Might end Japanese-American combat deployment across the entire Pacific theater. Reactions divided sharply. Some soldiers said he was a hero who'd saved American lives. Others said he was a cowboy who'd endangered future operations by alerting Japanese forces to American infiltration capabilities. Most said they didn't care about regulations as long as Charlie Company was still alive. Private Davis, the scout who'd found him, approached Matsuda after evening chow. Sat down without invitation. Charlie Company wants to buy you a beer when we get back to rear area. They know I might be court-martialed? They know you're the reason they're alive to drink beer. The rest is officer problems. Officer problems become my problems. Davis was quiet for a moment. Look, I don't know how this plays out. But I do know that 60 guys from Charlie Company are writing letters home tonight because you shot those Japanese soldiers. That counts for something. Not if division decides to make an example of me. Then they're making an example of the wrong thing. You want to punish soldiers for saving lives, fine. But don't expect the guys in foxholes to respect the system that does it. 2 days later, Captain Hendricks called Matsuda to Company CP. Battalion staff was present. Major Wickham, commanding officer of 2nd Battalion. Captain Foster, S2 intelligence officer. First Sergeant Cole, representing enlisted perspective. Wickham spoke first. Private Matsuda, I've reviewed the after-action reports from your reconnaissance mission on August 3rd. 10 enemy killed. 3 mortars destroyed. 0 friendly casualties. Those are impressive results. Thank you, sir. However, you achieved those results by violating direct orders, operating without authorization, and engaging enemy forces when your mission was reconnaissance only. Those are serious violations of military discipline. Yes, sir. Captain Hendricks recommended you for courts-martial. I've denied that recommendation. Matsuda blinked. Hadn't expected that. Wickham continued. I've also denied Captain Foster's recommendation that you receive a Silver Star. The truth sits somewhere between courts-martial and commendation. You violated orders. You also saved American lives. The question is which matters more to this battalion. He pulled out a folder. This is the official report on your actions. It states that Private First Class Roy Matsuda was conducting reconnaissance when he encountered enemy forces preparing to ambush friendly units. Recognizing that reporting through normal channels would result in unacceptable friendly casualties, Private Matsuda exercised tactical judgment to neutralize the immediate threat. His actions demonstrated initiative and commitment to his fellow soldiers. Wickham looked up. Notice what's not in this report. No mention of violating orders. No mention of unauthorized engagement. No mention of operating beyond mission parameters. Just a soldier doing difficult work under impossible circumstances. Sir, that's not entirely accurate. It's accurate enough to protect you from courts-martial and accurate enough to protect this battalion from division politics. Sometimes the official record serves purposes beyond documentation. Matsuda didn't know what to say. You're dismissed, Private. Return to your unit. Continue performing reconnaissance missions as assigned. And Private, if you encounter similar situations in the future, I trust you'll exercise appropriate tactical judgment. That was as close to official approval as Matsuda would receive. Permission to violate orders if circumstances required. Protection from consequences if results justified actions. The system adapting itself around reality while maintaining plausible deniability. The tactics spread. Within 2 weeks, 4 other scouts were using forward concealment positions. They didn't call it Matsuda's method or attribute it to anyone specific. They just quietly started establishing hides and natural cover deep into Japanese territory and waiting for targets that mattered. Private Jackson used a destroyed supply dump. Corporal Williams hid inside a bomb crater overgrown with vegetation. Sergeant Torres occupied a stand of bamboo thick enough to conceal him. Each reported similar results. Extended observation. Accurate intelligence. And when necessary, elimination of threats before they could engage American forces. By September, Charlie Company's casualties from ambushes dropped from 6 men per week to 1.3. Other companies noticed. Other scouts started asking questions. The technique spread through informal networks that existed below official channels. Soldiers teaching soldiers what worked regardless of what manuals said. The Japanese noticed too. Intelligence reports intercepted in late September mentioned American scouts demonstrating unusual capability for deep infiltration and concealment. One report stated, enemy reconnaissance elements establish positions using natural cover we cannot detect. They remain in place for extended duration. Recommend enhanced counter-reconnaissance and systematic searches before establishing defensive positions. But systematic searches were impossible. The jungle contained thousands of potential concealment positions. Searching everything before every operation would slow Japanese forces to the point where they'd lose operational tempo entirely. By November 1943, 7 battalions across the Pacific were using forward concealment reconnaissance. No official doctrine change. No training bulletin. No headquarters directive. Just results that spoke louder than regulations. The statistics told the story nobody wanted to acknowledge. Before forward concealment tactics, battalions in the Pacific averaged 4.7 soldiers killed per day from Japanese ambushes. After the tactics spread, average dropped to 1.8. Casualty reduction of 62%. Conservative estimates credited the methodology with saving approximately 3,000 American lives between August 1943 and war's end. 3,000 families who received their soldiers back instead of telegrams. 3,000 lives saved because one scout from Watsonville decided that following orders mattered less than preventing deaths. The military never officially credited Matsuda. Training bulletins began appearing in early 1944 describing enhanced reconnaissance techniques in restricted terrain environments. They taught exactly what Matsuda had developed without mentioning his name. Standard military practice. Take the innovation, bureaucratize it, distribute it, forget who created it. Roy Matsuda survived the war. Fought through Vella La Vella, Bougainville and Leyte. Made 72 forward reconnaissance missions. Never captured. Never wounded. Never court-martialed. Discharged in October 1945 with rank of Staff Sergeant and Bronze Star for Valor. The citation was generic. For meritorious achievement in support of combat operations. He returned to Watsonville. His family had been released from internment but had lost their farm. His father wouldn't speak to him for 3 years. His brother never spoke to him again. Matsuda took work in canneries, married a woman named Grace who'd spent the war in Topaz, had 3 children, never discussed combat. In 1979, a military researcher found references to forward concealment reconnaissance in Pacific Theater records. Traced the technique through casualty reports back to August 1943. Found Matsuda working as a supervisor at a vegetable packing plant, age 57, living quietly in Salinas. The researcher interviewed him. Asked about the bamboo pile, the tactics, the decision to violate orders. Matsuda answered every question simply. No embellishment. Just facts. Do you regret disobeying orders? No. Even though it could have ended your career? Charlie Company survived because I shot those soldiers. That mattered more than my career. The military never credited you with developing the tactics that saved thousands of lives. Does that bother you? Matsuda thought for a moment. My family spent 3 years in camps surrounded by barbed wire because we looked like the enemy. My brother died still angry that I fought for the country that imprisoned us. The military can credit whoever they want. Charlie Company knows what happened. That's sufficient. The researcher published findings in 1983. Identified Matsuda as originator of techniques that fundamentally changed reconnaissance doctrine. The paper was read by approximately 700 people. Nobody sent Matsuda a copy. Roy Matsuda died in January 2001, age 78. The Salinas Californian ran a 4-paragraph obituary noting he was a decorated World War II veteran who'd worked in agriculture for 50 years. One sentence mentioned he'd served in the Pacific Theater. The obituary didn't mention the bamboo pile. Didn't mention 17 Japanese soldiers. Didn't mention 3,000 American lives saved because he understood that sometimes protecting your fellow soldiers requires breaking rules written by people who weren't there. Today, every military scout learns forward concealment reconnaissance. They learn hide site selection. They learn infiltration procedures. They learn observation protocols. Everything Matsuda invented in 1943 while lying inside rotting bamboo, watching enemy soldiers prepare to kill his friends. They learn it as standard doctrine. As proper procedure. Most never learn where it came from. Never learn about the kid from Watsonville who hunted ground squirrels with 3 cartridges per week. Never learn about Charlie Company walking toward an ambush that would have killed 60 of them. Never learn about the choice to violate orders because saving lives mattered more than following regulations that didn't work. That's how real change happens. Not through official channels. Not through headquarters directives. Through soldiers who see problems, understand solutions, act despite consequences. Knowing the system might destroy them. Knowing history might forget them. Doing it anyway because sometimes keeping your friends alive matters more than keeping your record clean. If you found this story compelling, hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten histories. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. These soldiers deserve better than silence. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.